Welcome back to DFC Books. We are strapping in, charging the centrifuge, and diving deep into Andy Weir's absolute masterpiece of cosmic survival, Project Hail Mary.
Oh, what a book. This isn't just a simple space travel story. It's a puzzle box, really.
It is. It starts with the most fundamental question, who am I? And it just spirals out from there until the fate of not one, but two entire civilizations is hanging in the balance.
And we're going to be pulling from some really extensive excerpts from the narrative today. We'll be right there with Ryland Grace during his completely bewildering awakening.
And we'll also piece together those critical flashbacks that explain how Earth got into this mess in the first place, the Astrovage crisis.
Our mission today is to just unpack the whole journey. We're going to analyze the characters, the science, and track all the big events chapter by chapter.
Exactly. So let's set the stage. Chapter 1. The book opens with this question. What's 2 plus 2?
And it's just total bewilderment. Ryland Grace, though he doesn't know his name yet, is being interrogated by this soft, kind of emotionless computer voice. He's exhausted, and he can barely even manage a grunt to say, "Leave me alone."
The atmosphere is just so immediately unsettling. He's in this strange oval bed, and there are these robotic arms all around him, medical devices, he assumed.
And he thinks they're ready to, pin him down if he moves too fast.
Right. And there's this physical contradiction that the sources point out right away. His body feels surprisingly well-toned, like a runner's, but he's so weak he literally can't lift his own head.
He's trying to figure out where he is. A hospital, some kind of airtight quarantine room. But it's the silence, the cold, institutional design that's so deeply disturbing.
And then the central problem hits him. The computer keeps asking for data, and when it finally asks for his name, he opens his mouth and nothing.
That's the moment. The truth just crashes down on him. Total amnesia. I mean, that realization right there. That's the most important event of the opening. It's not a monster or an explosion. It's the psychological terror of not knowing who you are.
And it's such a specific kind of amnesia. His personal history is a total blank slate. He doesn't know who he loves, where he lived, nothing.
His brain has prioritized other things, like really obscure scientific data.
Exactly. He knows what an autoclave is. He knows what a pipette is used for. He even remembers this weird astronomical term, the thin red line, but he can't for the life of him remember his own name. That contrast is just, it's so key to his character.
You have to think that compartmentalization is what saved him psychologically, but the initial terror just keeps getting worse. He manages to finally get out of the bed.
And he finds himself in this huge round room. Just here he realizes he must have been confined for a very, very long time.
Which leads right to the biggest, most important discovery of that first chapter. He is not alone.
Not at all. The room has 2 other beds, identical to his, but the patients in them are long dead.
Yeah, the text describes them as desiccated, like Halloween decorations, just mummified by the dry air and the time.
That's such a gruesome image. And it confirms 2 things for him and for you as the listener. One, he was put here on purpose, probably in a coma, managed by those robot arms.
And 2, whatever this mission is, it's so far out, so unconventional that nobody could, or even felt the need to, remove the bodies of his dead crewmates. He is completely, utterly alone.
Okay, so let's unpack who this guy Ryland Grace actually was before the memory wipe. The flashbacks start to trickle in, right, in these chaotic little bursts.
They do, and they paint this picture of a brilliant but let's say, contentious academic.
A rebel, for sure. He was a research scientist who wrote this deeply controversial paper. The title is a mouthful, an analysis of water-based assumptions and recalibration of expectations for evolutionary models.
Which basically means he was arguing, why does all life have to be based on water?
Right. And the paper had this incredibly provocative subsection called "The Goldilocks Zone is for Idiots."
I mean, you don't write that unless you're trying to start a fight.
It's basically a declaration of war on the entire field of astrobiology. The sources say this paper was his kiss-my-butt move after he was sort of pushed out of his university for being too difficult.
But here's where his character gets so much deeper. He wasn't just some bitter academic. After that career imploded, he actually found happiness.
He became a junior high school science teacher, and he loved it. He loves the kids. He runs this game called the Lightning Round.
And he has this great realistic view of them. He calls them horrible, horrible animals. But you can tell he really, truly cares about nurturing their curiosity.
And even with the amnesia, that core personality is still there. He's constantly experimenting. The book mentions he's dropping things off tables and timing them with a stopwatch just to measure the local gravity.
That's such a Ryland Grace move. trying to find a constant in this totally chaotic new reality. And his enthusiasm is just, it's infectious. He's always saying things like holy moly or fudge when he's surprised.
But that enthusiasm, it kind of hides a pretty big vulnerability.
A huge one. The flashbacks later on reveal that the real Ryland Grace, the one before the memory drug, was prone to really extreme panic and anxiety.
So the amnesia, it accidentally made him into the perfect astronaut for this mission.
Yeah.
It suppressed all that crippling fear and left him with just the calm, focused scientist part of his brain.
Yeah, exactly. But what made this reluctant, anxious science teacher so essential in the first place?
It all goes back to that first memory fragment he has, the thin red line. This is the global threat.
Right. So the thin red line was discovered by a Russian astronomer, Dr. Irina Petrova. It wasn't a star or a nebula. It was this faint, lopsided arc of infrared light.
Specifically at the 25.984 micron wavelength, and it stretched from the sun's north pole all the way to Venus. At first, it's just a curiosity, a cosmic ribbon.
But that curiosity turns to absolute terror very quickly. JAXA, the Japanese space agency, starts monitoring it, and they confirm the worst possible news.
This Petrova line is actively stealing the sun's energy. It's converting sunlight into its own power source. And the critical, horrifying discovery is that it's doing it at an exponential rate.
And exponential is the point of no return. The implications are immediate and just devastating. An instant ice age, global crop failures, mass starvation.
The numbers from JXA were just horrific. The sun's output was going to drop a full percent in 9 years and a staggering 5% in just 20.
So that confirmation that the solar output loss was exponential, that's really the most important event for the whole backstory. It cements the reality that this isn't a long-term problem. This is a catastrophe that's happening right now.
So the world scrambles in response to something called Project Arclight. It's this desperate, super fuel-intensive mission to Venus to get a sample.
And they chose Venus for a couple of really practical reasons. One, the Petrova line was widest there, as wide as the planet itself, which makes getting a sample easier.
And two, they could use Venus's huge gravity well to help the probe with its orbits. A little bit of a gravity assist to save some fuel.
And this is where the global crisis slams directly into Ryland Grace's quiet, happy life as a teacher.
Yeah, in Chapter 3, he's just grading papers, trying to avoid what he calls the fleet of helicopter moms in the parking lot. And this woman, Eva Stratt, walks into the teacher's lounge.
Stratt is just the embodiment of authority. Mid-40s, sharp business suit, radiating this controlled intensity, and she does not mess around.
No, she cuts right to the chase. She knows all about his controversial past, his paper, everything. And she tells him, point blank, that the entire world has put her in charge of this crisis.
And Ryland, being the rebel he is, tries to just walk out. He has that great line, seems optional to me.
But Stratt doesn't even flinch. She just says to his back, it is not optional.
And she proves it almost immediately. This, for me, is the most important part of that whole sequence. It's the sheer force of the global machine that's behind her.
Absolutely. He goes back to his apartment, and there are these guys in suits flashing FBI badges.
You don't answer any of his questions. They just put him in a car, drive him to some generic business park.
And they walk him into what he realizes is the most advanced, most well-stocked biology lab he has ever seen in his life. Right there in San Francisco. He has just been drafted by humanity.
Stratt's ruthlessness is just. It's on full display from the very beginning. Grace asks her why the sample, which was recovered by the Russians, isn't in Russia.
And her explanation is just jaw-dropping. She said she ordered the Soyuz capsule to land in Saskatchewan, Canada.
Because it was the closest large, flat piece of land to San Francisco that was suitable for that kind of recovery. The Royal Canadian Air Force picked it up, put it on a military jet, and flew it straight to his new lab.
She's just bypassing international treaties, sovereignty, everything. All that matters to her is speed.
She has this unprecedented, totally desperate cooperation from every government on Earth. It just highlights how seriously everyone was taking this. Failure was not an option.
So it's here, in this high-security lab, that Ryland Grace finally comes face-to-face with the alien that is both destroying the sun and maybe offering the only hope for salvation.
The astrophage.
The astrophage.
Yeah.
And Stratt's paranoia when the sample arrives is extreme, but you can't blame her.
No, not at all. She insists the entire lab be flooded with argon gas.
And her reasoning is chilling. She's terrified this alien life form might be a deadly, fast-acting pathogen, and she is explicitly using Ryland Grace as a guinea pig.
When Grace challenges her on the ethics of that, she's brutally honest. She says she can't risk sending the sample to the world's top mines just to have them all drop dead instantly.
Ryland Grace, the tertiary science specialist, is disposable. Strad doesn't apologize, she just states it as a fact of the mission.
The astrophage itself is just bizarre. It shows up as these tiny jet black dots that are wriggling, and they actively absorb all light.
Which makes them impossible to analyze at first. Grace tries using an X-ray spectrometer, but it fails completely. The live astrophage just absorbs the X-rays. It's a perfect light sink.
So his scientific mind kicks in. He figures the only way to analyze this thing is to kill it first, to destroy its light-stopping ability.
So he starts incrementally killing them, just poking them with a needle. And then he analyzes the chemical residue. And he uses an atomic emission spectroscope.
And he learns two absolutely critical facts. One, they contain water, and two, they maintain a constant internal temperature of 96.415 degrees Celsius.
And that temperature, that's the first huge revelation. It's the moment Ryland Grace realizes his life's work, that Goldilocks zone is for idiots theory.
It's completely wrong. The alien life form that's killing the sun is fundamentally water-based. It's like a cosmic joke aimed directly at him.
But the truly game-changing discovery is its energy output. This alien microbe stores energy internally. And the math is just, it's absurd.
6 grams of astrophage, when burned, emit 540 trillion watts.
540 trillion watts. I mean, that number is so big it's meaningless. Can we even put that in context?
The source material does. It's effectively more powerful per volume than the surface of the sun. Or, to put it another way, those 6 grams contain enough energy to power a city like New York for something like 20,000 years.
It is a literal physics cheat code.
It is, and the breakthrough, which is the most important event of Chapter 5, is when Ryland figures out how it does this. He realizes the astrophage has what the sources call super cross-sectionality.
Right, and what that means is that it's uniquely built to absorb almost everything, light, radiation, even protons, and convert all that kinetic energy into stored power.
And he later deduces the mechanism is neutrinos. It converts the energy into neutrinos, which can pass through almost anything, so the astrophage can safely absorb and store energy on the sun's surface and then release it on command.
This realization changes everything. The astrophage goes from being just a threat to being the only possible fuel source for Project Hail Mary.
But building that ship requires that unprecedented global coordination, all overseen by Eva Stratt.
Who is really the anti-hero of this story. She establishes this immediate international immunity for herself, which lets her just steal patented technology, override governments.
Anything for speed.
Yeah.
And the clock she's racing is ticking down to mass extinction. A climatologist, Dr. Leclerc, gives her the data. Even with total global cooperation, half the world's population of 3.5 billion people will die in 19 years from starvation.
Stratt needs to buy them more time.
So she authorizes the most extreme action humanity takes in this entire crisis, this decision. It's the most important event that shows just how desperate they were.
She authorizes the use of 241 American nuclear fusion bombs.
Not to attack anything, but for what is basically environmental sabotage. They bury these bombs 50 meters deep in Antarctica.
The goal is to melt the ice, cause a massive release of trapped methane, a super potent greenhouse gas, and basically cause massive global warming to counteract the cooling from the sun.
It's just a terrifying calculation. They are knowingly committing the single largest act of environmental destruction in human history.
Just to buy the Hail Mary mission another 2 or 3 years? Stratt even says she fully expects to go on trial for it, but she sees jail time as a necessary sacrifice.
And that idea of sacrifice carries over to the crew. The mission to Tau Ceti is going to take at least 26 years, round trip. She couldn't risk the crew going insane or fighting.
Which brings us to the coma solution. This was based on old Soviet Mars Project research.
That research found specific genes that made people resistant to the negative effects of long-term comas. So the Hail Mary crew wasn't just selected for their skills, but for their DNA. The plan was to put them in a coma for years to prevent psychological damage.
So now let's look at the ship itself, the Hail Mary. This incredible vehicle designed for this impossible journey.
It's really 2 ships in one. In thrust mode, it looks pretty standard. A cylindrical ship, crew compartment on top of 3 massive fuel tanks powered by those astrophage spin drives.
But the journey is just too long for a human to survive in zero-G. You get bone loss, muscle degradation. It's a huge problem. And that's where Dr. Locken's brilliant solution comes in. Centrifuge mode.
The ship is literally designed to be cut in half, right between the crew area and the fuel tanks.
Cables extend out, the 2 halves rotate 180 degrees to face each other, and then they start spinning.
And that rotation creates artificial gravity, 1.5 g actually, from centripetal force. It's the only way the crew could survive for years while coasting through space.
Grace slowly figures this all out through his experiments on the ship. He notices everything is bolted down like for an earthquake, and he finally does the math on the rotation and sees the centrifuge label on a control panel.
And that realization is profound. The fact that he's in artificial gravity means the ship must have been coasting for years. At least 3 years from his perspective.
Which leads to the horrible, crushing conclusion that he is the sole survivor, and the time dilation was minimal for him, which means back on Earth, 13 years or more have passed. The crisis is worse. The Antarctica strike is history. That realization that he is totally alone, and those two bodies are his crew, is the most important event in Chapter 7. It just defines the rest of his journey. The sheer loneliness of Ryland Grace in that moment, realizing he's the absolute last hope for his entire species, is just, it's overwhelming. It's hard to imagine anyone overcoming that without just succumbing to panic. We'll dive into how he tackles that massive problem and his first contact with an unexpected ally right after this quick break.
Yeah, and if you are enjoying this deep dive into the fascinating sources behind Project Hail Mary, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We take these complex, thrilling narratives, whether they're books, research papers, or deep history, and break them down for you.
And we absolutely build these deep dives specifically around what you, our listeners, want to know. So please, if you have a book or a specific topic you want us to tackle next, head down to the comments and let us know your request. We read every single one. Now let's get back to Ryland Grace, the vast, cold emptiness of interstellar space, and the promise of salvation at Tau Ceti.
So Ryland Grace is struggling with this immense isolation. He's finally remembering the names of his dead crewmates, Yao and Iluchikina, and he starts exploring the ship's systems to distract himself.
And that's when he finds the control panel for the Beatles.
The Beatles. 4 small, unmanned probes, and their names, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. It's such a very human, slightly irreverent touch for such a desperate mission.
It is. Each one is fueled with 120 kilos of astrophage and has 5 terabytes of data storage. Grace realizes they're basically high-speed couriers meant for collecting or delivering samples and data over huge distances.
So 11 days before he's scheduled to arrive at the target planet, Tau Ceti E, the ship's petroviscope, the infrared telescope, picks up something extraordinary.
A sudden flash of light that quickly turns into a solid, moving light source. And it's not just moving, it's maneuvering intelligently. This is the Blip A, an alien ship.
This is the critical moment. The Blip A makes contact, but not with radio. It uses its own spin drives to signal its presence, and then it approaches the Hail Mary. And the key detail is its velocity.
It delivers this hot cylindrical object to the airlock at a precise, slow speed of 8.6 centimeters per second.
And that speed is so significant, it's the exact same velocity Grace had used earlier when he was testing his own engines, trying to signal hello.
So this maneuvering, and especially the delivery of that cylinder, that officially marks first contact. It tells Grace instantly that these aliens are smart, they understand physics, and they've been watching him.
The cylinder itself is an engineering marvel. It's made of pure xenon, which Ryland confirms with a spectrometer. It's hard, non-conductive, and you basically can't even scratch it.
Inside, he finds ammonia and these little miniature models. They represent astronomical concepts like the Tau Ceti system, and they have a model of the Petrova line. They're here for the exact same reason he is.
So Ryland initiates direct communication. He gets in his airlock, they put up a dividing wall, and he hears 3 knocks from the other side. Tap, tap, tap.
The universal language of, hey, you in there, he knocks back. And then he sees the alien for the first time.
Right, through this clear hexagonal partition. He immediately calls it the hot wall of pain because the heat coming off the alien side is so intense.
And he sees the alien, who he quickly names Rocky. It's got this brownish-black rock-like skin, 5 claws. He calls it a dog-sized spider.
They start trying to communicate with pantomime, focusing on time. Ryland uses his clock to establish a unit of time. Rocky shows his own clock, which uses rotors.
But they hit a massive obstacle almost immediately. When Rocky talks, it's not clicks or taps, it's 2 notes played at the same time. These incredibly complex musical chords.
And Ryland is, by his own admission, completely tone deaf. He has no musical ear whatsoever. So this is a huge problem.
It forces him to rethink everything. And this, I think, is the most important event of their early partnership. Ryland realizes, because Rocky is so confused by his visual diagrams, that Rocky is blind. at least to visible light.
He can't see the centimeter marks on a ruler. That changes everything. It forces Ryland to develop a piece of software, a script that can translate Rocky's musical chords into text on his screen. That's what finally makes real collaboration possible.
And once they can talk, the details of Iridian physiology are they're mind-boggling. Rocky is incredibly heavy, 168 kilograms. And on his home world, Arid, with double Earth's gravity, he'd weigh almost 800 pounds.
And his density comes from his biology. His blood is mercury. He's essentially a high-pressure, steam-powered machine. He has two circulatory systems.
An ambient system at 210 degrees Celsius and a hot system at a scorching 305 degrees.
His muscles work by being heated or cooled by these two systems. He doesn't breathe like we do. It's a closed internal system. He does vent ammonia, though, to get rid of excess heat.
Which is, of course, highly toxic to Ryland. But it's a vital coolant for Rocky.
This all ties into how Iridians sleep. To repair their hot blood system, the whole thing has to cool down. When that happens, they become completely paralyzed. They enter this deep, non-conscious state.
And a sleeping Iridian can't wake up on their own. They have no idea how long it will last. Rocky also mentions he's 291 Earth years old, which is apparently pretty young for his species.
So because he's blind, Rocky really struggles with Ryland's visual world. Ryland keeps trying to point at things, and Rocky just can't perceive them.
Until Rocky, the master engineer, just builds his own solution out of xenonite. He makes a camera that converts light into a texture that he can feel on a little panel, so he can finally see his surroundings.
But the real bond between them, the thing that makes them true partners, is forged in shared trauma. Ryland asks Rocky if another Iridian can watch over him while he sleeps.
And Rocky responds with this quiet, low-pitched, mournful chord, and the translation comes through. Original crew was 23, now is only me.
That moment. That is the most important event in Chapter 12. Rocky revealing he's the sole survivor, just like Grace. It transcends all their differences and creates this unbreakable bond. They're in this together now.
Yeah. So now let's go back for a minute. Part 4, when Grace finally accesses those really painful, suppressed memories about his own crew and his own role in the mission.
Right. He finds the pre-written death requests from Commander Yao and Engineer Ilikina, and they confirm the mission was always one way. It was a suicide mission.
Dubois, the main scientist, had a procedure for nitrogen asphyxiation. And Ilikina, she just requested a planned heroin overdose for massive pleasure, saying she'd been a good girl all her life.
And Yao, the commander, he was the last man standing, ready to euthanize the others if needed. The sheer calculated despair of it all is it's heavy.
Then we get the flashback in Chapter 23 that explains why Ryland, the junior high teacher, is the only one left. The primary and secondary scientists, Dubois and Shapiro, were vaporized back on Earth.
It was a fatal error, a total cosmic irony. Dubois was running a test. He wanted to activate a single nanogram of astrophage to see what it would do to a generator.
A nanogram,
Yeah.
a tiny 20-cell sample. But the quartermaster, the person filling the requisition, made a mistake. They gave him 1 milligram.
Which is 1,000,000 times more powerful. You couldn't tell the difference by looking at it. The heat release was instantaneous. Like a small atomic blast, it vaporized the whole building.
And Stratt's conclusion is so stark, she says, we just don't have the procedures to manage astrophage safely. That simple bureaucratic mistake is the most important event in that chapter. It shows the failure wasn't technology, it was human logistics.
And it confirms Ryland's destiny. Stratt reveals his amnesia wasn't an accident. She drugged him right before launch with a memory-erasing drug.
She groomed him all along. He was the tertiary specialist, the guinea pig. If the main crew failed, he, the guy with the rare coma-resistant genes, would wake up with the skills he needed, but without the crippling fear he used to have.
It's a devastating realization for Grace. He sees that he was a coward before, paralyzed by fear for himself, not for humanity. Stratt's cold calculation extended to his very sanity.
So moving past that tragedy, Ryland and Rocky now focus on finding the solution together. First, they need to understand Rocky's home planet, Arid.
Grace deduces its environment from Rocky's body. Arid has double Earth's gravity, and it spins incredibly fast. A day is only 5.1 hours long.
That fast spin creates a huge magnetic field which completely shields the planet from radiation, which explains why Iridians never evolved eyes. It was always dark.
So now they plan the sampling mission. The target planet is Tau Ceti E, which Ryland names Adrian. This is a super high-stakes maneuver.
They have to hover the Hail Mary in the upper atmosphere, firing the engines constantly just to keep from falling. Then they lower a 10-kilometer-long chain with a sampler on the end.
It's terrifyingly difficult, but after hours of waiting, he gets it. He pulls up the sample, looks under the microscope, and he finds it. A microbe that is actively eating the astrophage. He names it Tamoeba.
The successful retrieval of the Tamoeba, the predator they've been searching for, is the most important event in Chapter 24. It proves the solution is possible.
But the celebration is cut tragically short. As they're reeling in the sample, the ship gets damaged, and the centrifuge it spikes.
The force is immense, 6 or 7 Gs. It slams Ryland against a console, shatters equipment, and he inhales a cloud of toxic gas. He recognizes the smell immediately. Ammonia. From Rocky's life support.
Ryland is pinned, his lungs are burning, and this is Rocky's moment of incredible sacrifice. He leaves his own safe environment and enters the toxic high-G control room.
An act which forces his body into a deep, potentially fatal coma. But not before he cuts Ryland's restraints and pulls him to safety.
So now Ryland, badly injured, burned from touching Rocky's hot body, has to perform alien first aid. He somehow drags Rocky's 168-kilo body up through the spinning ship.
He gets him into an airlock, seals it, and then uses a high-pressure jet of ammonia-39 atmospheres to rapidly cool Rocky's system down, hoping it will save him.
That selfless act, Rocky sacrificing himself for his partner, forcing Ryland to master Iridian medicine on the fly, that is the most important event of Chapter 20. It solidifies their bond completely.
Rocky does eventually revive, but their victory is short-lived. Ryland analyzes the Tamoeba and finds a fatal flaw.
It can't survive in the presence of nitrogen. Venus's atmosphere has 3.5% nitrogen. The cure, as it is, won't work for Earth's sun.
So this forces them into a new, time-critical task, biological modification. Grace has to breed a nitrogen-resistant strain of Tamoeba, specifically Tamoeba 86, in base 6.
That base 6 is such a great detail. It's Rocky's numbering system, based on his 5 claws. Tamoeba 86 isn't a percentage, it's an Iridian calculation for the safety margin they need. So getting this modification right is the most important event of Chapter 27.
To do it, Rocky builds these little xenonite mini-farms to speed up the breeding process. He uses his material science to help Grace's biology. It's perfect teamwork.
During this process, Rocky also finally understands relativity, and he realizes that while 6 years have passed for him, far more time has passed on Arid, he's lost contact with his home.
But their partnership culminates in this amazing gift. Rocky reveals he has a huge surplus of astrophage, 2 million kilograms, enough to fuel the Hail Mary all the way home.
And he just offers it, unconditionally. He even says he'll build new fuel tanks for Grace's ship out of his own ship's hull.
It's a monumental gift. But Grace runs the numbers, and he realizes the horrible truth. Even with the fuel, he can't survive the 26-year round trip. There isn't enough food. He can't risk another coma.
Which leads to the most important event of the entire book, I think, Chapter 29. Ryland Grace makes his final sacrifice. He decides to stay behind.
His plan is elegant. It guarantees survival for both species. He loads the nitrogen-resistant Tamoeba onto the 4 beetle probes, John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
He sends those back to Earth. Rocky departs in his ship, the Blip A, carrying the cure for his own star. And Ryland is left behind, accepting his fate, planning to survive on coma slurry for as long as he can.
The final moments are so poignant. He dresses Rocky in Iridian celebration gear, and they share the vodka that Ilyukina had hoarded, a final human gesture of friendship.
They celebrate saving 2 worlds, and then Rocky leaves. And Grace is finally truly alone, but he's at peace with what he's done.
So we follow this incredible journey, from a terrified amnesiac to the savior of 2 civilizations. And his success hinged on this convergence of human desperation and alien ingenuity.
Yeah, the ultimate takeaway is the power of that intellectual partnership. Grace's biology expertise combined perfectly with Rocky's genius for engineering. Grace identified the nitrogen problem. Rocky built the farms to solve it.
He kind of proved Grace's old theory right, in a way.
Yeah.
That the minimum level of intelligence needed to dominate a planet is also just enough to find a partner and, save everyone.
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought for you to chew on. Ryland Grace sacrificed himself to get the cure to Earth and Arid. But now Rocky knows about relativity, and we know Iridians are incredible long-term planners. So as he flies home over those decades, how might he plan an intervention for Earth knowing his human friend is out there alone and dying 16 light years away?
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.